staff, the Admiral, there was a British Air Marshal, Thomas Pike, was the deputy secure. He was the assistant deputy to my boss, an American four-star general by the name of Lyman Lemnitzer. Sir Thomas Pike, after the incident in February of '61, said, we're going to have to figure what the hell's going on here. We're getting nothing from Washington or London on this issue. We ask, they don't send anything.
I see.
We ask them for information and insight on these objects. Who are they? What's happening? Nothing. Well, nothing was because everything that came from Washington and London ended up in Moscow, thanks to the French, the Hungarians, and the Germans and all. So the study was initiated strictly as a military idea to conclude what the hell was happening for us here. Is there a threat, yes or no? They concluded apparently not, because these guys had been coming and going for a long time. The History Annex took it back a couple of thousand years. The records, the photographs, the drawings, the paintings, it was unbelievable material. This was all just wild for me, you see.
Okay, but this is after World War II.
Yes.
This is after Germany had, we paperclip and...
Germany was divided.
Okay. And you were on West...
We were Western Europe.
Sure. Okay.
The Warsaw Pact was Eastern Europe.
So are you saying that the technology that was used by Hitler and his group, some of which was brought back to the United States, was not known to the West, to the people in NATO that were doing this report?
Of course not. It was highly classified.
But it's a classified document. So you're saying there is
classification. You have a classified document here, and then you have a classified document here, and the guys who wrote this one and have access to this one can't read that one because they don't have the need to know. Okay. Now the guys that have got this one and wrote it and read it and talk about it, they can't read this one because that's another separate classified document.
This guy Pike, right? He's the guy in charge.
Thomas Pike, Air Marshal Sir Thomas Pike, initiated the study in February of '61 and says,
he had a need to know.
I want to know what the hell's going on, and they started the study.
He's in NATO. There's some kind of animosity, I don't know, to this day between NATO, right, and the U.S. and...
Honey, you should have seen the animosity that existed in SHAPE headquarters itself.
Okay.
It was so bad that the Greeks and the Turks wouldn't even walk on the same side of the corridor. Cyprus was an issue back then, still is. So we had Greeks and Turks snarling and frowning at each other, and we had the French. Oh, excuse me, bless their hearts. The French were a pain in the butt from the very beginning.
Why?
Well, first of all, de Gaulle hated the fact that Churchill and Truman had not given him the appropriate respect that he felt he deserved. One of the reasons that happened while I was there is that France withdrew from the military alliance. De Gaulle threw us out. We had to pack our bags and move the entire kit and caboodle from Paris to Brussels. And I was there at the time when it happened.
Okay, now where are you reading the report before or after this happened?
I'm reading the report in Paris.
Okay.
SHAPE was located at a little town called Chatou, Rocancourt, right outside of Paris.
Right.
Little old Napoleonic battle took place there somewhere. Anyhow, the animosity between the French and everybody else, the Germans, the Italians, and the Americans and the Brits were all like this. The French were over here.
But you're saying that the guy who initiated the report is Pike?
Pike.
Okay. And you're saying, I mean, he clearly had a need to know if he's having flyovers, and the U.S. is hearing about this, Britain is hearing about this, the people at the top are hearing about this. So he does this report on his own, or
no,
or something. That's what it's sounding like. I mean, he had a need to know, so theoretically
he was a 5-star rank air marshal.
Okay.
He had authority to initiate a study like this, and he did.
Okay. Where did it go from there? Do you know? Did it go to the U.S.? Did it go to...
No.
It sat in a safe
They
somewhere?
published 15 copies.
Right.
A copy went to the U.S. Copy 1 went to the Secretary General of NATO. But you cannot imagine what an international headquarters is like. It's like a wasp's nest. As I said, the Greeks and the Turks were snarling at each other all the time. The French were always angry at everybody.
Okay, so what are you saying, 15 copies?
15 copies were initiated. Copy went to the U.S., copy went to Italy, copy went to France, copy went to UK, and so on. 15 copies were out. One copy, I think the 14th or the 15th, came right there in the vault at Shock.
Okay.
Reading material for the controllers, the full colonels who ran the 24-hour-a-day war room.
So you weren't the only one that read it?
Oh, no, no, no. No, we had an American Air Force general by the name of Robert Lee. Robert Lee read the thing.
Okay.
I got to know his aide fairly well. I was a lieutenant colonel. And inside the war room, we were a select group. We all had the highest clearance possible. The enlisted men and the officers mingled closely. The enlisted men had, the senior enlisted men, most of us were top, E7s or E8s, and a couple of E9s. So we mingled closely, and it wasn't on a first-name basis. There was always respect for rank. But when you work in a war room like that, and you work closely together over the years, you get to know each other pretty well. General Lee's aide told me, he said, when the old man read that story, or with that report, the assessment, he says it hit him like a truck, hit him like a ton of bricks. He told me that the general threw his hat across the desk and he says, do you know what the hell this means? Everything we've got, everything we've done, everything we've had, doesn't mean a damn thing. The shock was pretty serious. Here you have a highly decorated World War II Air Force general who'd been all over the place. I think he flew B-29s in the Pacific. He said, well, if this is all true, if this is real, what we've got, our military, our Air Force, our bombs, our planes, doesn't mean a thing. The conclusions of the study, after 3 years, concluded that they had been coming here for a very long time, that they apparently had some involvement in the origins of our species. Big shock to traditional people, particularly Christians and Muslims people. It was interesting is that apparently there was not a threat involved. If they were hostile or aggressive, they would have been over a long time ago. Now, what was their purpose? Well, the study was not able to conclude that. It said that the military committee will continue this research, which indicated to me that the study in some form had continued, that this document in '64 was simply an initial conclusion.
Okay.
But when they concluded that there were 4 different extraterrestrial groups involved, and one of them was totally human, looked just like us, that was a big shock to the old traditional mindset of the military. The admirals and the generals, you know, they couldn't deal with it.
And it also said that there was something to do with the religions, that all the religions of the world.
Well, let me tell you, the study was not that thorough. It was a beginning for me.
Okay.
It was the initiative, the initial event that triggered my curiosity. It launched me on 40 years of research. And much of what I've concluded has been a result of the years of study since. You see, I continued to dig, I continued to probe, I continued to turn over rocks. As I said, I drove my friends up the wall.
Okay, you looked at this material, you learned a lot, you weren't the only one, you've convinced me of that. Supposedly, I mean, these people that you know also read it, they weren't your close friends, I'm assuming.
Well, they were not my dearest, closest friends, no.
Okay. But were you able to talk to them or have relationships with them outside of like 1967? Did you ever compare notes?
We formed, back in those days, what we called the Old Boys Network. And this network was made up of people like myself, enlisted and commissioned, of all services, Air Force, Marines, Army, Navy, as I said, all ranks. Mm-hmm. There were others like me who were so engrossed by this and excited by it and what it meant. You hear a few of them coming out even today, those that are still alive, saying what I saw, what I learned, what I concluded, the reports I studied, the contacts that I knew happened. Some of them had contacts themselves.
Sure. Personal
Contacts with some of these guys.
Okay, so
Phil Corso was an example. You familiar with who he was?
Absolutely.
I knew Phil fairly well. He and I were speakers at several conferences together. And in Italy, I got to know him pretty well. Phil shared with me things that he had happen to him. Not just what he had seen, but he had personal contact with an alien at White Sands. He was in charge of the security of the range one time. And something came in, the radar picked it up. He hopped in his car, went out to see what the hell it was. There is a UFO sitting on the ground. There's a guy standing beside it. And Corso walks over to him and says, you know, what the hell are you, who are you, and where are you from, and why are you here? And this fellow says, I just came to talk. And Corso asked him, he says, well, are you with us or are you against us? Simple military type question, you know, are you with me or are you against me? Mm-hmm. And the guy says, neither. Mm-hmm. We're neither for you or are we against you? And he had a conversation with this guy that lasted over an hour. And the guy says, please turn off your radar. It disturbs my control or my guidance system, so I can leave. Corso went back to the shop, or back to the headquarters, turned off the radar, and away he went. I got to know, through the Old Boys Network, dozens of guys like myself, okay, who were as excited and enthused about the thing as I was.
But they didn't become whistleblowers. What's the difference?
Some of them did. Some of them lost their commission. Some of them lost their rank.
Can you name somebody? If they became a whistleblower, do I know them?
No.
What happened?
Many of them just retired and died.
Okay, so they tried to blow the whistle, but they didn't get known. They haven't lasted.
Let me explain something
that you have that allowed you to
I was one of the loudest loudmouths. And this is my nature. I retired as a command sergeant major. Mm-hmm. And that rank gives me the privilege to open my big yap to anybody. The generals, the admirals, and everybody in between. You see? It's a unique kind of rank to have.
I see.
The generals depend on you to tell them the truth.
Ah.
Whether they like it or not. And so you learn to tell them the truth. Well, I turned out to be a big mouth. I sat on this for, when did I come out of the closet, so to speak? This term.
Right.
Yeah.
From 1967.
I sat on this until from 67 to 92 or 1. 91? I believe I came out of the closet in 91.
Okay. So that's a long time.
Yeah. I respected my oath, which I swore. Mm-hmm. I took an oath to never share anything that I learned of a classified nature while I was on active duty. And I knew that if I did, I could go to prison for 10 years, $10,000 fine, forfeiture of all pay and allowances, retirement, everything, whatever, forever.
Okay, so you've come out. What happened to you?
So I came out in 91 at a conference in Tucson, Arizona.
All right.
The result was of monumental aggravation and frustration that the government had continued over all these years to lie to the people.